film called Everything Everywhere All at Once. Thank you. I made it with my two friends, Daniel Scheinert and Dan Kwan. It's an insane film, and it's all Premiere's fault because Premiere allowed us to experiment so freely and so quickly that basically any idea we had, we could get out in a couple of minutes. Just try things, experiment, throw everything at the wall. A lot of the reason for that is the way that Premiere allows us to kind of collaborate. We started cutting it in 2020, 2 weeks before lockdown. And Adobe had kind of heard of this workflow through conversations with them. They let us know that there was this thing called Productions coming out. And Productions just, this movie 100% would not have been possible to pull off in the way that we pulled it off without Productions. I'd have my edit file, I'd have Dan Kwan's, Daniel Scheinert's, and then any other editors that we wanted to get involved. So we're constantly opening it up. If we get stuck on a scene, we'll bring in an editor or an artist or anything, anyone who has the kind of sensibility that we think will work. The thing about Premiere that makes this possible is that we can teach someone how to use Premiere, the basics, in a half day. So we could have a swarm that's composed of a couple of editors of varying technical abilities and maybe a fine artist or a photographer who we've sat down for half a day, taught the basics of Premiere, but they have a certain sensibility that we think, or a certain sensitivity to the subject matter that we think would help the project. And they can just be this kind of idea generating factory, filtering it all back into a central editor. One of Premiere's big features that we used in this film were the time remapping keyframes. So the Daniels overcranked almost every shot in this film. We just really went crazy with the speed ramping. So what we would do is we'd go in and kind of moment by moment, we would decide what needs to be quick, what needs to be a little slower, where do we have the weight. A lot of times it means leading into a hit. Kind of one of our weird approaches to using Premiere is we like to find ways to use Premiere and the filters in ways that aren't necessarily, it's not necessarily designed to do, but we can still reap the benefits because somehow the robustness of Premiere allows it to keep functioning even when you're using it wrong, which I think is one of the greatest parts about Premiere. So we do a lot of experimentation with audio. Let's take this clip, for example.
Okay, sir.
Like, let's see what happens if we put matrix reverb on it 7 times, 8 times, and then gain it up a bunch. So it becomes this kind of musical instrument. So let's see if we do it 5, 6 more times. It starts to become something else. You get this weird low end. It becomes this kind of water harp sound, kind of a helicopter. So the great thing about Premiere is that a lot of other apps would just not do that. They wouldn't let you do that, or it would just stop playing. People talk a lot about the democratization of filmmaking, and it's been kind of a catchword for a long time. We can bring these ideas, these kind of like strange ideas and these strange sensibilities, and bring in these people who know nothing about the rules of editing, what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to use a project file or an audio file, and we can just let them break it. We can let them do something that has never been done before, and Premiere can keep up. You know, art is messy, creativity is messy. We should embrace that, and we should also celebrate the fact that Premiere allows us to be messy and allows us to edit however we want. So the reality of this timeline is, I think, kind of beautiful, but it's a mess. And it worked. This was the timeline that we were using to do screenings. This is what we were, working in. Now, some people hate this, and you don't have to work like this. But I love that I can work like this, and that Premiere doesn't get mad at me or tell me that I need to have everything on certain tracks, or that if I have more than 6 or 7 audio tracks, we have, I don't know how many audio tracks we have in here, but it's a lot. Yeah, 37 audio tracks. We've gotten up to 60 before, and I don't want to change the way I work because it looks nicer. I want to work the way I work because it feels good and allows me to get my ideas down as quickly as I can. Thanks, y'all.